You know what fascinates me about taking Social Security at 62? It's not the math. It's not even the strategy. It's the fact that one of the most important financial decisions you'll ever make doesn't feel like a decision at all until suddenly it is. And by then, it's already done. Before we continue, if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, this would be a really good time to do it. I've got a lot more of these waiting for you. The real question isn't should you take Social Security at 62. It's what does taking it at 62 actually cost you? And is that cost worth it for your life? Because here's the thing. Most people walk into this decision focused on one number, the monthly check. They see what shows up at 62, they see what shows up at 67, they see what shows up at 70, and they pick the option that feels right in the moment. But that check is just the surface. Underneath it, there are 6 quiet disadvantages that most financial advisors will never sit down and explain to you. Not because they're hiding it, but because the conversation is uncomfortable. It forces you to think long-term in a world that wants you to think short-term. So let's slow down. Let's look at this honestly, because you deserve to know what you're actually trading when you turn that faucet on early. And speaking of that faucet, let me give you a picture. Think of your Social Security benefit like a faucet. Behind that faucet is a pipe, one you've been filling your entire working life. Every paycheck, every tax contribution, it all builds pressure in that pipe. Now here's how it works. The longer you wait to turn the faucet on, the stronger the pressure becomes. Wait until 70, the flow is powerful. Turn it on at 62, the flow is lighter. But here's the part most people don't think about. That faucet belongs to you. You paid into it. And what you choose to do with it shapes the next 20 or 30 years of your life. Not just one decision, 20 years of decisions compressed into one moment. So let's get into it. The first disadvantage is the permanent reduction in your benefit. And I want you to really hear that word, permanent, because most people hear it, but they don't feel it. When you claim at 62, you are not just taking a smaller check this year, you are locking in a smaller check for every single year that follows, forever, for the rest of your life. If your full retirement age is 67, claiming at 62 cuts your benefit by about 30%. 30, almost a third of your benefit gone. Not for a year, not for 5 years, for life. Now let that sink in, because the way it's usually framed is something like, well, you'll get more checks if you start earlier, so it evens out. And on paper, sometimes it does. But life isn't lived on paper. Life is lived in your 80s when healthcare costs are climbing. Life is lived when inflation has been chipping away at your dollar for 2 decades. Life is lived when you suddenly need more, not less. And that's when the permanent reduction stops feeling like a math problem and starts feeling like a weight. Here's the thing. Most people are being told they are behind when they're not. But the system is also very good at making you feel like you need that money right now. It quietly nudges you toward the early option. It doesn't scream. It just suggests. And before you know it, the decision is made. Here's a question. If you had to choose between more money now or more certainty later, which would it be? Keep that in your head as we go, because every one of these disadvantages comes back to that same question. The second disadvantage is what happens to your spouse. And this one is the one financial advisors really don't talk about enough because it's uncomfortable. It involves imagining a future where one of you is gone, and nobody wants to sit in that room. But you have to, because the decision you make at 62 doesn't just affect you, it affects the person sitting next to you. Here's how it works. When one spouse passes away, the surviving spouse keeps the higher of the 2 Social Security benefits, not both. The higher one. So if you are the higher earner and you claim early at 62, you've just locked in a smaller survivor benefit for your spouse for the rest of their life. They could be living another 15, 20, even 25 years on that reduced amount. And by then, you won't be there to help them figure it out. Here's a question for the married folks. Have you and your spouse ever actually talked about what happens if one of you is gone? Not in a dramatic way, just practically, because the silence around this conversation is what causes the damage, not the conversation itself. I want you to imagine something. Picture your spouse 10 years from now, sitting at the kitchen table, looking at a monthly statement, and the number on that statement was decided by a choice you made today. That's the weight of this decision. It's not just about you, it's about the love you leave behind in the form of stability. The third disadvantage is the earnings limit, and this one catches so many people off guard because they think, well, I'll claim at 62 and I'll just keep working part-time. No big deal. But here's what they don't realize. If you claim Social Security before your full retirement age and you keep working, there's a limit to how much you can earn before Social Security starts taking money back from you. Let me say that again. Taking money back from you. For every dollar you earn above that limit, Social Security withholds part of your benefit. It's not technically lost forever. You get some of it credited back later. But in the moment, it can feel like you're being punished for working. And for a lot of people who claim at 62 because they think they need the income, this is a brutal surprise. They expected a clean check every month. Instead, they got a complicated formula and a smaller deposit. Now, here's where it gets real. If you love your work, if you want to keep contributing, if you want to stay engaged with the world, claiming at 62 could actually slow you down. Not because work is bad, but because the system was not designed to reward both at the same time. It quietly pushes you to choose, and most people don't even know they're being asked to make that choice. The fourth disadvantage is what inflation does to a smaller benefit. And this is the one I really want you to pay attention to. Because inflation is the silent eroder. It doesn't show up in dramatic headlines every day. It just slowly raises the price of bread, of gas, of medication, of everything. Invisibly, steadily, year after year. Now, Social Security does have cost of living adjustments. They're called COLA. And every year, your benefit goes up a little to try to keep pace with inflation. But here's the catch. COLA increases are calculated as a percentage of your existing benefit. So if your benefit is smaller because you claimed early, every COLA increase is also smaller. The gap between you and the person who waited doesn't shrink over time, it grows. Let me give you an analogy. Imagine two people each have a small garden. One person plants in a bigger plot of soil, the other plants in a smaller one. Every year the rain falls equally on both, but the bigger plot produces more food. Year after year, the smaller plot keeps producing, but it never catches up. That's exactly what happens with COLA adjustments on a reduced benefit. You're still getting rain, but you're growing less. And here's the thing, people in their 60s feel strong. They feel capable. They look at inflation and think, I can handle this. But people in their 80s who have been watching the silent pressure of inflation for 20 years, they feel it differently. They feel it in the grocery store. They feel it at the pharmacy. They feel it in the heating bill. And by then, the decision you made at 62 is locked in. There's no going back. Quick pause. If you're finding this helpful, the subscribe button lives right down there. And I promise I only make videos worth watching, because the next disadvantages are the ones that really change how you think about all of this. The fifth disadvantage is the opportunity cost of guaranteed income. And this one is subtle. It doesn't look dangerous. It often comes dressed as guidance, even helpful, but once you see it clearly, you won't be able to unsee it. Here's what I mean. Social Security is one of the only sources of income in retirement that is fully guaranteed, fully backed, and adjusts for inflation. There is nothing else quite like it. Not your 401k, not your IRA, not your investments. Those all carry market risk. Social Security does not. So when you claim early and lock in a smaller permanent benefit, you are voluntarily reducing the size of your most powerful guaranteed income stream for life. Now, I want you to imagine your retirement in two parts, not one big number, two distinct piles. Pile one is income that shows up no matter what. This includes things like Social Security, pensions, rental income, money that continues whether the market is up or down. Pile two is your savings, your investments, your accounts. Now, here's the critical mistake most people make. They focus almost entirely on pile two, while barely acknowledging pile one. And yet, pile one is often doing far more heavy lifting than people realize. When you claim at 62, you are making pile one smaller, permanently, and that means pile two has to work harder. Your investments have to stretch further. Your savings have to last longer. Every market dip feels more personal. Every bad year feels more dangerous, because the guaranteed floor underneath you is lower than it could have been. Think of it this way. Your income floor is like the foundation of your house, strong, underground, invisible, but holding everything up. Your savings, that's more like the furniture. Nice to have, comfortable, but it sits on top of something else. Most people focus on decorating the furniture while ignoring whether the foundation is solid, and when you claim Social Security early, you are quietly lowering the foundation of your entire retirement. You may not feel it right away, but you will feel it eventually. Let me ask you something. Do you know what your monthly income will actually look like when you retire? Be honest with yourself, not the dream version, the real version, because that number, that floor, is the most important number in your entire retirement plan, and it deserves more attention than it usually gets. Let's meet two people to make this real. The first one, let's call him Frank. Frank is 67. He spent over 3 decades working a steady, dependable job. Nothing flashy, no big windfalls, just consistency. If you saw him walking down the street, you wouldn't think, there goes someone financially secure. You might actually think the opposite. Frank lives in a modest home. He drives an older car, and if you looked strictly at his savings, you'd probably panic for him, because Frank has around $140,000 saved. By the standards you've been taught, Frank is behind. But here's what you don't see when you only look at that number. Frank waited until his full retirement age to claim Social Security. He has a small pension from his old job. His home is fully paid off. Every single month, without touching his savings, money shows up. Consistently, predictably. Frank is not struggling, Frank is not stressed, Frank is living a life that works. Now let's meet Gary. Gary did everything right, at least according to the rules he was given. He saved aggressively. He invested diligently. He followed the benchmarks. And today, Gary has $800,000 saved. On paper, Gary is a success story, but Gary doesn't feel like one. Because Gary claimed Social Security at 62. He took the smaller check. He locked in the lower amount. He still has a mortgage. He doesn't have a pension. He relies heavily on his investment account to fund his life. Every market fluctuation feels personal. Gary has more money than Frank, but less peace. It's not about who has more saved. It's about who has more certainty. And that's the part nobody tells you. Frank's smaller savings account isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign that his income floor was already doing the work. Gary's bigger savings account isn't a sign of success. It's a sign that he has to lean on it harder because his floor is lower than it should have been. You may already have what people with millions are searching for. You just have to stop measuring yourself by the wrong number. The sixth disadvantage is the one almost nobody talks about, and it's the most personal of all. It's the regret. The quiet, slow, invisible regret that creeps in over the years when you realize the decision you made at 62 was based on incomplete information. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying it because I've heard it over and over from people who claimed early and didn't fully understand what they were giving up. They didn't know about the permanent reduction. They didn't know about the survivor benefit. They didn't know about the earnings limit. They didn't know about the inflation gap. They didn't know about the opportunity cost. They just knew the check was available, so they took it. And then 10 years later, 20 years later, they look at their monthly income and they wonder, what would my life look like if I had waited? What would my spouse's life look like? What would the floor under my retirement feel like if it had been built higher? That kind of regret doesn't scream. It doesn't look dangerous. It just sits quietly in the background of every financial decision you make for the rest of your life. And the worst part is, by the time you feel it, there's nothing you can do about it. Here's the thing. I am not telling you that claiming at 62 is always wrong. It isn't. There are real situations where claiming early makes complete sense. If your health is poor and your life expectancy is shorter, claiming early can be the right call. If you have no other income and you genuinely need the money to survive, claiming early can be the right call. If you've run the numbers honestly with someone you trust and the early option fits your specific life, claiming early can be the right call. But here's where most people get tripped up. They don't actually run the numbers. They don't actually consider the survivor impact. They don't actually think about inflation 20 years out. They claim early because it feels easier, because the check is right there, because someone told them you might as well take it, and that's the part that breaks my heart, because the decision deserves more thought than that. The question isn't what's the best age, it's what's the best decision for your life right now. Your life, not your neighbor's life, not your brother's life, not the example in some article you read, your actual life, your actual income, your actual spouse, your actual health, your actual expenses. Let me ask you this. If you could go back 10 years, what would you do differently with your retirement planning? Because the people I talked to who claimed at 62 almost all of them say the same thing. I wish I had waited. I wish someone had explained this to me. I wish I had understood what I was actually trading. And the people who waited until 67 or 70, they say something different. They say, I'm glad I waited. The bigger check makes my life easier. My spouse is taken care of. I don't worry as much. I sleep better. That's the difference. Not in the math, in the peace. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, but what if I don't live long enough to make it worth waiting? What if I claim at 70 and then I'm gone at 72? Didn't I just lose all that money? Here's the honest answer. Yes, if you only look at it that way, you would have collected less in total. But Social Security was never designed to be a return on investment calculation. It was designed to be insurance against living too long, insurance against outliving your money, insurance against running out at 85 with no safety net. That's its real purpose. And when you frame it that way, the bigger check isn't about getting more out of the system. It's about protecting yourself against the scenario you can't predict. Think about it. If you knew exactly when you were going to die, retirement planning would be easy. You'd just spend exactly the right amount each year and run out at the perfect moment. But you don't know. None of us do. And that's why guaranteed income matters so much, because it doesn't care how long you live. It just keeps showing up. Imagine walking onto a car lot. Every vehicle has a sticker price. Bold, official, intimidating. It looks final, non-negotiable. But if you've ever bought a car, you already know the truth. Nobody pays the sticker. There are hidden discounts, dealer incentives, timing advantages, negotiation room. The real price is almost always lower, but the sticker exists to anchor your expectations, to make you feel like anything below it is a win, even if you're still overpaying. Now take that exact same idea and flip it onto Social Security. The check at 62 is the sticker price they show you first. It looks available. It looks reasonable. It feels like a win because, hey, money now. But it's not the real value. The real value is what you could have had if you understood the full picture. And that's the part the sticker is designed to hide from you. Here's what I want you to do. First, figure out your income floor. What money is coming in every month, no matter what? Social Security, pensions, anything stable and predictable. That number matters more than you've been told. Second, calculate your real expenses, not based on your current salary, based on your actual life. Housing, food, healthcare, travel, the things you truly care about, because retirement isn't about replacing income, it's about supporting your lifestyle. Third, find the gap. What's the difference between your income and your expenses? That gap is what your savings need to cover, not some generic benchmark, just the gap. And once you see that gap clearly, you can ask the right question about Social Security. Not, can I claim at 62? But what does claiming at 62 do to my gap, my spouse's gap, and my future self's gap? Fourth, run the survivor scenario. Sit down with your spouse if you have one. Talk about what happens if you go first. Talk about what happens if they go first. Look at the numbers, honestly, because love isn't just what you say, it's what you plan for. And fifth, give yourself permission to wait, if waiting is what makes sense. So many people feel like they have to claim early because the option is there. They feel guilty for leaving money on the table. But waiting isn't leaving money on the table. Waiting is building a bigger floor, a stronger foundation, a better guaranteed income stream for the rest of your life. That's not loss, that's strategy. Here's a thought. If the system only rewards you with almost enough, you will spend your entire life chasing more. How does that make you feel? Because that's exactly what claiming at 62 often does. It gives you almost enough. Enough to feel okay in the moment, not enough to feel secure for the next 20 or 30 years. You don't need perfection to have a successful retirement. You need clarity. You need to see the trade-offs honestly. You need to understand that the check at 62 isn't free. It costs you something, permanently. And once you can see that cost clearly, you can decide whether it's worth paying. Some of you will read all of this and still decide to claim at 62, and that's okay if it's the right decision for your life. The point isn't to push you in one direction. The point is to make sure you're not being pushed by accident, pushed by the convenience of the system, pushed by the silence around the real disadvantages, pushed by the comfort of taking the option that's right in front of you instead of the one that requires patience. Numbers matter. But how you feel about those numbers matters just as much. And the people who feel best in retirement are almost never the ones with the biggest accounts. They're the ones with the most certainty, the ones who know their floor, the ones who built their guaranteed income with intention. You are not behind. In fact, you may already be standing on one of the strongest financial foundations available today. You just have to stop measuring it by the wrong yardstick. Stop measuring yourself against everyone else. Stop feeling behind, and start focusing on what truly gives you freedom. Retirement isn't the end of something. It's the beginning of something new. A new rhythm, a new pace, a new way of living. And the goal isn't just to survive it. The goal is to enjoy it, to wake up without financial stress, to make decisions without fear, to live with confidence, not hesitation. The 6 disadvantages of taking Social Security at 62 aren't meant to scare you. They're meant to inform you. The permanent reduction, the survivor impact, the earnings limit, the inflation gap, the opportunity cost of a lower guaranteed income, and the quiet regret that comes from making a decision without all the information. Now you have the information. Now the decision is actually yours, not the system's, not the default, yours. And that's the shift. From fear to clarity, from chasing to choosing, from not enough to enough. If this video made you think differently about your retirement, subscribe. The next one goes even deeper.